We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin Amar Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 97a. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which had a machlokas tanoim by temid. Let's say you take water and pour it over the sediment of grapes, and it captures the taste of the grapes. There was a machlokas tanoim whether the bracha is going to be bori preagafen or whether the bracha is going to be shahakal. And the Gemara in the previous summit brought the opinion of Rava. Rava said that this machlokas tanoim is specifically in a situation where the amount of liquid actually increases when you pour it over the sediment, but it doesn't increase so much that you have a ratio of 1 to 3, because once you get that ratio of 1 to 3, meaning 1 part wine and 3 parts water, then already everybody would agree that it's considered to be wine and the bracha is bori preagafen. But the case over here is that the ratio increased a little bit, but not fully. And so the machlokas tanoim is whether that increase is considered to be enough that you make a bori preagafen, or if you would still make a shahakal. And the Gemara in the previous summit then asked, is it really true that if something was added, there's even a machlokas? Everybody should agree that if any amount was added, the bracha would be bori preagafen. And the Gemara now brings a Mishnah in Meseches Maasros to that effect. The Mishnah says, Hamitamed v'nasan mayim b'mida u'matza kedei midaso. Let's say a person is doing exactly this. He's taking water, he's pouring it over the sediment of grapes, and the sediment that he's using is actually meiser. So the question is, now this temed that was created, is that also considered to be meiser, because it's taken from the sediment of meiser, of the sediment of meiser grapes? And so the case over here in the Mishnah is that the exact amount of water he put in is the same amount that came out. So it's a machlokas tanoim, pater for Rabbi Yehuda mechayev. The Tanna Kama says pater from meiser, and Rabbi Yehuda says chayev. And so the Gemara now draws the inference, adkan lo pligi, ela b'chtei midaso. The only machlokas tanoim here is when the exact same amount of water comes out. Aval b'yoser michtei midaso lo pligi. But it seems that if it was more than the amount of water comes out than was originally poured in, then it sounds like there's no machlokas tanoim, and everybody would agree that there's going to be a chayev and meiser, and the same should be true in terms of its status. It should be considered to be like wine, and the bracha should be bori preagafen according to everybody. And the Gemara says that's not necessarily the interpretation of the Mishnah. It could be that even if the amount of water that came out, or the amount of liquid that came out, was more than what was put in, they would still have a machlokas. You would still have a machlokas tanoim, and the Tanna Kama would say pater, and Rabbi Yehuda would say chayev. It could be in this case the Tanna Kama would not necessarily agree with Rabbi Yehuda that it's chayev. So the only reason that the machlokas in the Mishnah is talking when it was the exact same amount of liquid, that's to show the strength of Rabbi Yehuda. That Rabbi Yehuda says chayev and meiser, even though nothing was added, still we say that it is chayev and meiser, because again the shmarim came from grapes which were meiser. And the Gemara continues, by Minei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak mein Rav Chia bar Avin. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asked Rav Chia bar Avin, shmarim sheyesh bohen tam yayin. Again, you have sediments and they have the taste of the wine. Mahu, what would be the halacha? And the Rashbam says again, Shemorim sheyesh b'am tam yayin mahu labir chasayayin. We're asking, what bracha do you make? And the Rashbam notes over here, we just had a brisa about this. Why is he asking the question? U'brisa lo have a shmiele. So the Rashbam says that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, who's asking the question, he didn't hear this brisa. Do you have a shmiele hachi? Have a leila memar halacha kacher ramoin halacha kacher. And if he heard the brisa, he should have just asked, is the halacha like the acherim or not? In any case, he asked this question: when you have this temed, what's the halacha? What bracha do you make? Amarle said to him, Misavert Chamrahu, do you think that it's really wine? Kiyua Ba'almahu, it's really just water that has the taste of wine, and therefore the bracha is not going to be bori preagafen, but rather the bracha will be shahakal. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Shemarim shel truma. Let's say you have shemarim again, you have this water that's run through the sediment of grapes, and the shemarim are truma. And so now the question is, what's the status of the water? Is the water considered truma? So Rishon v'sheni aser. So the Brisa says that the first amount of water that goes through and the second, each time you run water through, it gets a weaker and weaker amount of the taste. So the first and second are still aser. They're still considered to be forbidden. It means here forbidden to non-kohanim. It's considered truma. Ushlishi mutter, but already the third run, that's going to be mutter. That takes very little of the taste of the shmarim. Rabbi Meir says, no, af shlishi b'nosen tam. Even the third, if you can detect the taste, that's enough to make it aser. And the Brisa continues, V'shal Meiser. Now let's say it's Meiser Sheni, that the Shmarim are not Truma, but they're Meiser Sheni. Rishon Aser, so then the first run of the water is going to be forbidden, but Sheni Mutter, but the second one will be Mutter. And again, Rabbi Meir argues, Rabbi Meir says, Af Sheni, B'no Sein Tam. The second run of the water through the sediment will be B'no Sein Tam. If you can taste it, then it's going to have the status of Meiser. And finally, V'shal Hektish, let's say it runs through Shemarim that are Hektish, Shalishi Aser, so that's more strict already. The third time also is going to be Aser, or Ravi mutter, but the fourth time you run water through it, that's mutter. Rabbi Meir Omer, again, Rabbi Meir argues and says, Af Ravi, benosin tam, even the fourth time if there's a taste, so it's going to have the status of hektish. And the Gemara continues, Uramini, we have the following contradiction. Shall hektish liolam aser. According to this brisa, by hektish it's going to be aser always, meaning no matter how many times the water goes through. V'shal meiser, and when we're talking about meiser sheni, liolam mutter. So it's always going to be mutter by meiser sheni. That's a double contradiction. Kasha hektish hektish. Kasha meiser meiser. We have a contradiction in terms of hektish. We have a contradiction in terms of meiser sheni. And the Gemara says hektish hektish lo kasha. When it comes to hektish, that's not a contradiction. It's not difficult. Kan b'kedushas haguf, kan b'kedushas damim, because you can have two kinds of hektish. You can have kedushas haguf. Kedushas haguf means that it's actually wine that was supposed to be used on the mizbeach. It was for the purpose of nisach hayayin. That's already more strict. That's the second brisa that says it's liolam aser. But the first brisa that says by hektish again shalishi aser and revi mutter, that's just talking where the wine has kedushas damim, which means that you're going to sell that wine and use the money for the Beis HaMikdash. That's a lower level of hektish. And similarly, the Gemara answers by meiser, meiser on meiser, nami lo kasha. When it comes to meiser also, it's not difficult. It depends what kind of meiser. Kan b'meiser vade. In one case, we're talking where it is certain meiser, and kan b'meiser demai. The other case, we're talking where it's demai, meaning you got it from an am ha'aretz. In such a situation, it's really just a suffix, whether it's meiser sheni. As the Rashbam explains, meiser demai, shehufresh mi peiros halakuchen me am ha'aretz. You separated it from produce that was taken from an am ha'aretz. V'akilu bei rabbanan mishum derov am ha'aretz ma'asrin hein. There, the rabbanan are lenient, because in general, the majority of Ameoris do take off Meiser. It's just like a stringency over there, and that's why we can be more lenient in that situation. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok, Kederech Shamru Linyan Isuran, just like we say in terms of prohibitions, when it comes to temed, we had a question whether it's considered to be like wine or is it considered to be like water. And again, it makes a difference in all these cases if the sediments are truma or hektish or whatnot. So kachamru linyan hechsher, and the same is true when it comes to being machshir. Now, in general, what we mean by machshir is, let's say water touches food, so now it has prepared it. That's a hechsher. It has prepared it to be makabel tumah. Now, the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter if it's water or wine, because both water and wine have the ability to prepare something to be makabel tumah. And that's why the Gemara immediately asks, hechsheran demai, what do we mean to say when we talk about being machshir? If it's water, it's going to be machshir l'kabel tumah, and if it's wine, it's machshir, so there should make no difference anyways. And the Gemara answers, lo no tzrich, it's necessary, shetamdu b'mei geshamim. The case over here is, not all kinds of water can be machshir l'kabel tumah. When you have rainwater, meaning if it's water that wasn't collected for the purpose of the person to use that water, it was just rainwater, so that kind of water would not be machshir l'kabel tumah. But now, let's say that rainwater passed over some of these shemarim, if it gets the status of wine, then it doesn't matter whether the person wanted it or not. Wine automatically would be machshir l'kabel tumah. But the Gemara now clarifies and asks, v'kevan to kashakel v'rami luhu l'maneh. But one second, if he's taking it and putting it into a vessel, so achshavinu, so he is showing that it's chashav, he is showing that it's important to him, and therefore even if it's water, that should be able to be machshir. And the Gemara says, lo no tzricha, it's necessary shenitmad me'elav, because it just happened on its own. The rainwater fell on the shemarim, on the sediments, happened all on its own. It was never collected by the person. But the Gemara still says, v'kevan de konogid kamo achshavinu. But again, we talked about the first run of water that goes through these sediments, and the second and the third. So clearly he is collecting every single time. So again, he's made it that it's considered to be chashav, it's important in his eyes. He's collecting it for himself. And therefore, again, even if it's water, it should be able to be machshir. And the Gemara says, no, Amar Papa says the case could be bepara sheshosa rishon, that the cow is drinking it from there one at a time. So the first two, let's say, the cow drank it up, and then the third time, he never put it in any kind of vessel. The person never was really involved. So now it makes a difference. If it's considered water, because it's really just rainwater, it's not going to be machshir l'kabel tumah. But if it's considered to be wine, then it is going to be considered the kind of liquid that can prepare something to be makabel tumah. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Amar Rav Zutra bar Tovia Amar Rav. Rav Zutra bar Tovia says, the Rav says, Ein omrim kiddush hayom ela al hayayin haroi linosech al gabe hamizbeach. We only make kiddush on wine that you could have poured on the mizbeach that could be used for nisach hayayin. And the Gemara says, lemute mai. Well, what does that come to exclude? What kind of wine can you not use on the mizbeach that therefore you can't use for kiddush? Ilema lemute yayin migito. If you're going to say that it comes to exclude, let's say you have wine that is fresh from the wine press, meaning essentially essentially grape juice. Maybe that cannot be used for Nisach HaYayin. Maybe grape juice cannot be used for Kiddush, but that's not true. V'atani Rabbi Chia taught, Yayin Migito, if you have wine straight from the wine press, lo yavi, he shouldn't bring it for wine for Nisach HaYayin on the Mizbeach. However, Vimhevi kosher, but if you do it, it's kosher. You're not supposed to do lechatchila, but b'diavad, after the fact, if it's done, it's considered good. V'kevan dimhevi kosher, since if it's done, it's good. Anon afilu lechatchila nami. So for us, when it comes to Kiddush, even lechatchila, you should be able to use grape juice. If b'diavad, it would be good on the Mizbeach. So therefore, we can't be talking about grape juice, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Zayin Amid Beis.